Welcome back to Yin and Yang Healing. We're exploring beyond the physical with Kirsten and her sister Megan, and of course
Hi.
Stir. Thanks for joining us, Megan. So, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about why you wanted to come on here and chat?
Yeah, I guess it's been almost 5 years to the date that I had health anxiety and just general anxiety. And it's been about 2 weeks since I had my last session with Kirsten, and my whole life has changed. So,
Well, it's pretty fresh still, hey?
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's like one of the biggest, I would say one of the biggest issues that people come with is like anxiety and like depression, that kind of stuff. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
What was it like before? Like, what were you struggling with?
I kind of like typed out a whole thing. Is that like weird if I read that?
No,
No,
I
I'm
mean, like,
into
go
it.
for it.
I really want to hear your story, kind of like start to finish.
Yeah.
And I
So
think, yeah.
I tried like so hard to like think about like how this whole journey started, and because it's so long ago that it started, it's a little long. So
It's okay.
you're up for it.
Yeah, I feel that. It's sometimes hard to like think back to like when you're in the shit, when you're in the good spot now.
Totally.
Yeah.
It definitely brought up a little bit of like that anxiety when I was even like writing it, because it was just like reliving it. But figure I
feel like, yeah, you gotta, sometimes it's hard to like tell your story like in the middle of it. You really gotta go back and tell like the beginning of it, because I think other people might relate with that and then realize themselves like how far back their journey like goes, and then you can like really see the evolution of like where you've been with your health anxiety and everything.
Well, like what triggered you to like want to get help with it? Like, you know what I mean?
It's a long story. Basically,
all right, take us back.
Here, I'll read this for you, and then you'll kind of see. So in 2018, when my son was born, it was the best year of my life, but it would also be the beginning to the hardest years of my life. And not because motherhood would prove to test me in every way possible, but because I developed an anxiety like no other. I'd never had anxiety before. I really didn't even know what anxiety was. And I was in for a wild ride. I felt like something was really wrong just inside. Like I just didn't feel right. And that's like the best way I could describe it to my doctor, was just something felt off. My heart was always racing. I couldn't catch my breath. I'd be lightheaded. I thought I was going to faint. But every doctor just said, you're a new mom. You just had a baby. That's a lot for a person, and it's just anxiety. And I just knew in my heart I was like, there's no way. I've never been an anxious person. Like no way. So like fast forward, it really wasn't back then, 5 years ago, it wasn't anxiety, but what it was causing some serious anxiety, but I'll get to that. So I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with me. And it was a really scary feeling because I just had a baby, and I thought like, I just became a mom. Like I want to be a mom. And, what if something happened to me, and like, what would happen to him if something happened to me, and he needs me. And I'll never forget his first New Year's Eve. We're at my best friend's place, and I woke him up to ring in the new year. And after we all said Happy New Year, I went to go put him back to bed. And I just remember holding him, and I was sobbing, thinking, I can't believe I made it to 2019. Like that's how much I truly thought something was so wrong. Like I was dying. I didn't think I was going to make it. And so that was like a big milestone for me. And it sounds pretty dramatic, but when you have such a strong anxiety, that logical feeling really doesn't, like logic doesn't make its way in. So fast forward a little bit, I got pregnant with my second, with Layla, and somehow magically this anxiety, it went away. I don't know how it happened, but that overwhelming fear of death and leaving my babies, it was behind me. COVID happened, and that was fun times. And then 2021, I had another baby. So baby Remy was born, and just like that, it was back. I was lightheaded. My heart was beating out of my chest. I had insomnia, paralyzing fear, panic attacks, extreme exhaustion. And by then I had started a business, and I really just threw myself into my work and into my photography, booking myself like crazy to just distract my brain from how I was feeling. I actually remember my family would tell me you're anxious because you're overworking. And I was actually, not that it was healthy, but I was using my work to cope with my anxiety at the time. I isolated myself a lot from friends and family because everything I was experiencing was so overwhelming, and I really didn't want to talk about it. And when I'd be with my friends or family, instead of having like a good conversation and catching up, my mind was somewhere else. It was like I would be looking right through the person talking to me. I was always worried about my health. That was what my brain was always thinking about, and I just couldn't turn it off. And in my defense, when your heart feels like it's beating out of your chest, or when it feels like it's not beating at all, anyone would probably feel the same way. And so I treaded through 2021 thinking things would get easier the more I got used to my symptoms, or maybe things would magically get better again, like they did before. And nope, 2022 was my ultimate low. I had tried what felt like everything. I had, so from like a medical perspective, I had heart tests done, like blood work, like crazy. I went to a naturopath even, and I had tests done with my naturopath. I tried a million different supplements, meditation, yoga, journaling, affirmations, and nothing. I was living a life that I'd always dreamt of. Only I was so stuck in my mind that I couldn't truly enjoy any of it. That's the most painful part about this journey, actually. Life was just passing me by, and I was watching it from the sidelines. And then two things changed everything. A neurologist referred me for a tilt table test, and I found some conscious imprinting. So the doctor who performed the tilt table test, before I even did the test, he was just asking me some like basic questions, and I could see it in his eyes. He had seen someone just like me before, and he knew my story. So at the end of the test, he mentioned something about POTS, like really vaguely, quickly corrects himself because he, isn't allowed to diagnose anything. But he told me, your symptoms are not anxiety. What you have causes symptoms that would make you feel so unwell that they would cause anybody anxiety about their health. He says he sees a lot of women, particularly mothers, who all experience the same thing, and that I was really lucky to make it this far in my journey to see him, because most doctors would misdiagnose these symptoms as anxiety, and most people end up on like anti-anxiety and antidepressants and for their whole life, and they never get to address the root cause. So I left this appointment in tears because I just knew it. I knew it in my heart that something was wrong. Like it wasn't just anxiety. And I was like, oh, I'm not crazy. And by this point in my journey, I definitely did have anxiety. There's no doubt about it, because my POTS symptoms, I had had them for so long. They were so debilitating. And like, I feared those symptoms so much that created an anxiety that I would have to later work through.
Can you just a quick side note for our listeners and anyone watching, can you just tell us a little bit about what is POTS?
POTS,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's not something like it's not something super common that people are like talking about.
So it's a little bit, as far as I understand, it's a little bit different for everyone. My particular case was that I'll get really low blood pressure and a low heart rate. And that will make me feel lightheaded. I'll get heart palpitations. And in Western medicine, they don't really talk about it, but it's basically your adrenals are fatigued, and it's like it's taxing your body. And so your adrenals protect your heart, and basically that causes like heart palpitations, and the lightheadedness is because your heart isn't beating like regular and like strong enough. So it's your body is really smart and protects the heart. And so the blood won't pump all the way to your brain, which would make you feel lightheaded, that like extreme fatigue and stuff like that. Some people have POTS, but have really high blood pressure. Mine was just really low blood pressure.
Right. And it's a syndrome of like the autonomic nervous system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this like chronic fatigue in the last episode, actually.
Oh, really?
And how, yeah, it's like how there's always a root cause to it. So yeah, definitely. I feel like your story is relatable.
Yeah. So I left this appointment and I like quickly Googled POTS because he had mentioned it. It was like implanted in my brain. I Googled it and it connected all the dots, and it was like, okay, this is what it is. And then it took about 5 to 6 months before I got an official diagnosis from my neurologist. And how you treat POTS through like Western medicine is you live with it forever and you manage the symptoms. And that's how I found subconscious imprinting. Basically, that's like no bueno for me. I'm not gonna live struggling forever. And yeah, to me, there's always a root cause to something. And I was just had to figure out what that root cause was for me. So it helped ease my mind knowing that I was not in fact dying. And even though I knew at this point that it was just POTS, logic still doesn't always win, as I mentioned. So I didn't just stop worrying. I could talk myself out of some of my anxiety and panic attacks, but those symptoms still brought on a lot of fear. So I had spent hours monitoring my heart rate, my blood pressure. I would Google, which is Google's like your worst enemy, but I'd Google every symptom that I had. And I spent hours reading into Chinese medicine and herbalism. And I listened to every health book and podcast. And I follow every single functional medicine doctor on Instagram. And I spent just so much of my time trying to connect the dots on like what went wrong with me that all of a sudden I had these symptoms, like these POTS symptoms, and how I could go back and reverse that. I've had dozens of late night panic attacks that I can't even keep count. I've written letters to my kids and my husband in case today was in fact my last day. And I've had a lot of relationships that need to be re-nurtured from a lack of being present. I put my kids and my husband through hell. And I've only openly shared really my story with very few. It's up until now, it's been a little hard to talk about. 2023 is here. That's been 5 years almost to the day. And I'm 95% better. And I hope that one day I can get to 100% and the old me. I might just be a bit of a new me now. And really the thing that I found was subconscious imprinting. And it's that's why we're here today.
Look at that smile on your face when you're talking about subconscious imprinting. Your face just like lit up. I love it.
That's amazing. And the fact that you're saying that you're 95% after it's only been 2 weeks since your first session, like imagine you had 4 sessions.
So
Oh,
I
no,
have
no.
had a few sessions, but we just had the one on
That was
the,
like our last one. That was our eighth session.
yeah,
Was
Oh,
2 weeks
okay, there
ago.
you go.
yeah, but we
We're
worked
working
on
on
like
this.
a lot of different things. Because like my POTS symptoms were plenty. I had to work through some of those kind of apart from like POTS as a whole. So like I'd have like circulation issues, and even though those can be a symptom of POTS, for me they were emotional from like a different time in my life and not actually related to POTS at all. That's kind of
Right.
the cool thing about subconscious imprinting. But
Yeah, we were talking about that last episode too, how it's like just layers upon layers, and you peel
yeah.
one layer off and then another one gets exposed and you're like, well, now I got to deal with that.
Yeah, Kirsten, like she asked me kind of like when we started, like when things got really bad, she said, like, how are you feeling? Like on a scale. And I said, like, out of 100, like 8.73.
Yeah, it was like a very
terrible.
specific
Wow.
number, and it was very low. I remember
Yeah.
that.
And so I'm in the 90s now. It's
Nice.
I think I
Yay.
still have stuff to work through, and
It's incredible.
For sure.
yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to you in the sense of like feeling like sit also saved my life. I was like literally like considering ending my life at one point, and it was a sit practitioner that like gave me an emergency session, and like
oh,
it changed my
really?
entire life. So I feel you in so many ways like on this, and it's extremely life changing. And
Mhm.
I also just wanted to say that like I hear what you said about like putting your family through hell, and I'm sure that at some point you'll probably deal with that as well, like any of the guilt or shame or anything like that
Yeah.
associated with that, because it is hard like when you put other people through stuff because you're dealing with your own shit.
Oh
But
yeah. Like even just like friendships, like I just didn't, I was so wrapped up in what I was going through that like, usually you reach out to your friends and you get together for coffee and you check in on them. And I just didn't have the capacity to deal with anything other than like my problem. And it
Yeah.
kind of sounds selfish, like when I say it like that, but like it was just so debilitating, and like my brain,
Consumed you.
I couldn't turn it off, that it was just someone would text me, like a nice paragraph, and asking like how are things, and they want to like get together, and it was just like I couldn't, like
Yeah.
I was so run down mentally that like physically to like go and like do that just because like in your friends and your family, they know you, right?
Mhm.
I don't know how many times my grandma's like FaceTimed and has been like, why won't you show your face? We want to see you. And you don't like, are you okay? You don't look great. Your family knows and your friends know. And I think that's why I distance myself so much from everyone, because they would know, like they would know
Mhm.
something's going on. And if I couldn't figure it out myself in my mind, and I didn't know what was going on, how am I gonna like explain that to someone else? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
For sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's incredible like what your body will do to get your attention on something like this. Are you open to sharing what came up with all that healing?
yeah. So actually, it's funny that you said it's like interesting what your body will do to get your attention. So actually, my very first sit session with Kirsten
It's a funny
had
story.
nothing to do with my anxiety. But so
Yeah, this was like your gateway. This was like your
this was my
gateway to
gateway.
sit.
Yeah. And I think like, I don't know, like the universe knew that I needed that session to show me something like tangible,
Yeah.
so that like I would believe. And because I will like say I am not historically a spiritual person, I thought like sit like, I don't know, like this is a little like woo woo. Like, what are you going to school for? I don't know. So after I had Remy, I got an alopecia spot, probably like this big, like bigger than a toonie. I'll show you after, but here on my head.
You show me yours and I'll show you mine.
It was right in my, like where I part my hair. And I was like, well, like this is annoying, but like, you know, postpartum hair loss, like, I don't know, no big deal. I changed my hair part. And so I parted my hair like a different way. And I got another alopecia spot right where I parted my hair. And I was like, well, like this is annoying because like this is the only two ways I can part my hair. So I went to like putting my hair up in a bun. Just fine. I'm a mom. I can rock the mom bun, hide the bald spots. And I got another alopecia spot at the base of my head. So like there was no running from this problem. Every time I tried to hide it, it was like, surprise.
Your body's like, oh no, girl, pay
It's in
attention.
here. And so I had tried like, you know, a couple supplements, and like people would say like alopecia is from stress. And so like trying to de-stress, and Kirsten was like, you should really try and have a sit session on it. And I was kind of like, sure. Like what's like the worst that's going to happen is it's not going to grow back. So like,
yeah.
Cool. So I had a session with her. I'll also note I am not an emotional person, and I cried through like 80% of our session. So for our session, the loss in my hair was like a reflection of the loss I was feeling with my middle child when my youngest was born. So just like that connection, and like having to like spread my time across 3 kids now. And yeah, we had that session. I cried a lot. And like literally 2 weeks later, not even, my hair started growing back. And I don't even think this has been a full year. I don't think it's been a full year. I'll have to find it.
I'll have to look at the notes. Yeah.
Can you see it?
Barely. Can barely see anything.
But do you see how like this hair?
Oh, that's the regrowth.
Like,
oh, that's the regrowth.
Yeah. So like
they've all grown back.
Yeah. There's
nice. That's amazing.
But like that's like it's to here now. And like I'm talking like it was like a big spot.
Yeah, girl. I had a big one too. Like this big.
Wow. How did you resolve?
Well, it's like you said, it's like an autoimmune thing, and that was just my body's way of like basically like I feel like my body does these things now because I've gone through so much healing like this, where it'll be like, bitch, I'm just going to show you something dramatic so that you just do something. So that like I don't necessarily have to have a session on it unless I'm just like super stuck. But before it showed up, I was just like really unhealthy, and I was just like, fuck it, whatever. Like every diet that I try, it just doesn't do anything. And my body's just like, that's not good enough. And so I went to a naturopath and ended up just like it was a wake-up call essentially.
Like you changed your whole lifestyle. And
I changed my whole lifestyle because I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
Like to just suddenly have like I have a pretty like thick head of hair, and then to like suddenly have massive like bald spot. And yeah, I don't know if I could really like show you guys on this because it's like kind of in the back and I'll be all weird, but it's like, it's like basically like a big like white spot now. So it's just like all white hair, but I was lucky enough to
mine started
do
turning
something
gray at first, but
so I was lucky enough to like start healing it before all the follicles were gone. But it is amazing like what your body will do. And so like going like deeper to there, I guess I will say though, I did explore like the emotional component of it, which for me was like giving away my power. And it was a kind of a similar situation where like I bought a house with like my partner who has kids. So it's like you're adopting humans that are not from you. And like that's a big like life-changing commitment and whatever. But anyway,
Well, it's interesting that you say you're like giving up your power, but still like a loss. Still your hair is like showing you a loss.
yeah, it was
Hair
like a
loss.
loss of, I feel like it was like a loss of maybe a bit of like grieving like the what life could have been maybe, but
Because it's
I chose
interesting
this
how
path.
sometimes it's interesting how sometimes the body will like mimic to you like through hair loss, right? That there's some sort of loss that is unresolved. And that doesn't just have to be like a death loss. That could be like a loss of a relationship or a connection or loss of power or loss of what you thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
I think it was like a loss of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like even just the loss of my connection to like my health. Cause I literally like before I discovered I was just like, fuck it. Like I don't even care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how the body tries to get your attention, hey?
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like there's a lot more there's a lot more in there, and I want to dig, but I want to be sensitive to it as well. So I just love hearing the patterns.
Yeah, a lot of things came up. Like, we've had 8 sessions, so like a lot of stuff to do with my dad. The way that him and my mom's marriage ended, I think was hard for him, and I took on those emotions for him. So like that loss that he was feeling, how he probably didn't feel like an adequate parent just from his poor behaviors and poor choices that led to their divorce. He didn't feel like enough, and then something happened, and he essentially lost his family through divorce, but he lost like what was his, and like that sense of family. And I think I took that on for him. And so my health anxiety and this like fear of dying and fear of like leaving my family, and I would write them letters and to tell them how much I love them, so like if something happened to me they would know. And I think that's because he lost his family, and then like that was it. We didn't have a strong relationship with him really, like for a little bit, but like down the road we wouldn't have a relationship with him. And so I think when I took on those emotions for him, I got a family, so Hudson was born, and then all of a sudden I was terrified of losing that opportunity to be a mom or a parent. So that he came up in a lot of our sessions, a lot of, yeah.
Do you remember what the tape, like what was like the thing playing in your head during that time?
Oh gosh. Like when we had our session, or like when?
Just like when you're going through stuff, I guess like when you're talking about like the fear of like losing people. And I bring this up because I do this exercise with my clients where we uncover this like it's kind of like uncovering the root cause, but without knowing how to do sit. And it ends up being like a phrase like I'll lose them. And it will tie back to like something like this. And you're like, why do I keep having this phrase of like I'll lose them? And you're like, oh shit, someone in my family lost their family. And it's like a way to do generational healing without knowing how to do sit and all that woo stuff.
I think like I was just genuinely like, I was like, I am dying, like this isn't normal, and like something's wrong with me. But then like after I had like a first session, I would always tell myself, like when I would journal, I would say like, I am safe and I am healthy and like, I am happy. And I would just have to like, for some reason, have to like remind myself that like, you're safe. Like, it's just this, like, it's just a symptom, you're safe. And like, you're not dying, you're healthy.
So I am dying was like the thing that would play in your head over and over. That's really interesting. I would be very interested to explore your family line in that regard as well.
So I did have a past life session with Kirsten.
Do tell.
And that one's emotional for me. So it basically like started, it was like a girl, so Kirsten walks you through, I should talk about like how like past life, that would be confusing for somebody. That's kind of confusing. Kirsten, I guess like explain what a past life session is, and then I'll explain like what mine was.
Right. So a past life healing session, we're basically going like into really deep state of relaxation, where you can like access all levels of your memories. And so when you walk through like that session of like deep relaxation, and allowing your mind to like go there, then we're like with the intention of like going back to when that first issue first arose, in whatever life it was. And then I walk you through that and prompt you like with questions, like while your eyes are closed and you're recalling like what sensations or visualizations that like come to you. And we work through like the past life that way.
If I could just add to it, like for some people listening, they might be able to relate to it a little bit by saying that it is a little bit similar to accessing Akashic records in a sense, which Akashic records is basically like the energy of like the whole universe and everything that's ever happened. And so it's kind of like you're being led to tap into that piece of yourself. So you can basically tap into any part of your ethereal being, spirit, and that's how you can access those other lives and realities. Anyway,
yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's good.
I just say that because like I've tapped into the future in one of mine before, so it can go like both ways. So anyhow,
that's wild. I don't want to future. So yeah, it started with like this girl walking on or she was in the water, then she's walking on the beach, and like her family was watching her, like she was watching her family, but it was like her family wasn't watching her, as if like she wasn't actually there. And then it kind of jumped, and then she was laying in a bed and she was really sick, and her kids were there and her husband was there. And Kirsten asked me, like, what did you learn from this life? Like, what kind of life was it? And I just started crying, and I was like, that it was a good life. And I don't think like our session went like far past that. There's something, I guess, like in a past life to do with death, and it just felt so like real.
I think in that session you felt bad that you were dying because you were young.
Yeah.
You weren't like old and dying, you were young. I think it was like 48, like in your 40s or something like that. And so you felt like a lot of like pain and loss that you were like leaving everyone behind.
Yeah,
that would make a lot of sense. Yeah. You would like on a subconscious level, you would create this false belief that now I have to fear leaving everyone. Now I have to fear dying because I'll die too soon.
Yeah. You know,
and you died, so you couldn't resolve it.
We were in Revelstoke like a week ago, and we're at like this children's store, and I opened this book. I was like, oh, like I wonder what this book's about. And I opened it, and it was like this. I didn't read, well, I read like a little bit. The picture was a sick mom in her bed with like a little boy. And the story was, it was like, he missed his mom and spending time with her. She had like tuberculosis or something. And it was a really old story, but it was like, I saw that picture and I was like, just, whoa, like it was like almost exactly what was in my mind when we had our session. It was really interesting.
wow.
I should have taken a picture of it. It kind of freaked me out. I was like, I don't know if I want to remember this. But yeah, it was like,
Wild.
what are the chances I opened it on that page? Which just
Yeah, that is synchronicity, 100%. I mean, like, I know that some people are like really skeptical about this kind of stuff, but I 100% believe in synchronicity of the universe and like signs from your higher self, your angels, whatever you want to call them.
I have
Um,
a
it's all
question,
meant.
Megan.
It's all meant. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
When you saw that, like, how were you like feeling? Like, did it like trigger you, or did you feel like a sense of like calm that you like worked through it? Like, what were you kind of feeling when you
I think
saw
like
that?
it shocked me. So like I said, like I'm not historically like a very like spiritual person. So like it kind of like I was like, whoa, like that's crazy. But no, it didn't like ignite anything. I think I've like worked past all that like really well. That like, I mean, maybe not 100% because I didn't want to take a picture of it. but yeah, no, like I felt fine. It just was like that's crazy.
Mm,
Like, and I believe things like, like everything happens for a reason and like what's meant to be will be. After starting sit, I definitely have like a deeper belief in like that, like the universe, like kind of like there is like a plan for you and like
mhm.
it's
Mhm,
not
all-
like
yeah.
it's easy to say like everything happens for a reason, but like I think like really truly, like having the hair loss like that, I did go see a dermatologist and they could just mask it, inject some steroids in your scalp and try and like boost hair growth. But like, I like believe in my heart, like that's my body trying to tell me something, like there's something
Mhm.
wrong.
Yeah.
Like the anxiety, so many of my friends said like, you haven't tried Xanax yet? Like you had a panic attack? Like, why didn't you like come over to my house? You can like have one of my like Xanaxes. Like, are you
Let's have a
crazy? Like
Xanax party.
Xanax is the worst. And I don't believe in just masking it. Like, could a Xanax have helped like in that time when it was like really hard? For sure. And I'm not, knocking anybody that has to go on antidepressants or anti like anxiety medication. I know like people can be in like pretty dark spaces and like need to get out of that quickly and like for sure. But I don't believe that it's a long-term solution. Like
Mhm.
that anxiety is happening for a reason. Something's off
Yeah.
in the body, something happened in your past and it's coming up now, but like there's a reason.
Yeah. And actually, if you guys don't mind, I want to touch on that, like everything happens for a reason thing, because yes, I agree. And also, I also just want to like let everyone know that like you can have a say in the path. So it's like, this is something that we practice and sit a lot, which is muscle testing and like following your intuition. And sometimes it makes no fucking sense. It's completely illogical. But when you follow that, like what your body is saying, what your subconscious, your gut, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, is saying to you, and you take that path, the things that will happen after can be like mind blowing and just like change your entire life. Whereas if you ignore that, then yes, like things will happen for that reason as well. So it's like things do happen for a reason based on both choices. So it's nothing is right or wrong. but it's like just a path that you choose. So it's like you either choose to take your path that's light, that's ease, that's alignment, or you choose to take your path that's maybe a little swervy and ziggy-zaggy and not totally in a straight line.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel like sometimes people just like say it's just like throwing it to the wind to fate, but I don't really believe that. I believe that like we all have this like essence within that we can tap into, and we can choose a path that is very aligned for us if we listen. But you have to do this kind of like healing to really be able to tap more and more into that.
Oh, 100%. Like when I first started, like even sometimes like I'll like text Kirsten, I'll be like, can you muscle test this? Like, why is this happening? Is this anxiety or something wrong with my heart? And she'll say like, just like calm down and like ask yourself, like, is it because of this, or is it like emotional? Like, is it physical or is it emotional? And when I first started, I was like, I don't know. Like, I can't, my body doesn't know, like, like, what are you talking about? But like now that like I've put a lot of work in, like I do this one thing, and like you guys probably know what it is, but like the sway test. So basically like I'll close my eyes and like I'll just stand, like a normal stance, and I'll close my eyes and I'll ask myself, I'll say, show me a yes. And usually for me, my body will sway forward. And then I'll either like put myself back in the middle, or I'll wait till my body does. And then when I'm back in the middle, I'll say, show me a no, and I'll go backwards. And now for the most part, if I have like those like doubts about something that's going on, and like, okay, is this anxiety, or like, is this a symptom of this? Or even like something simple, like, should I take this supplement today? Like, is this right for me today? And I'll close my eyes and I'll ask, and like, I totally have like that intuition now, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a muscle. You got to
Yeah,
practice.
I
right?
will say she has definitely texted me a lot less. So that's it. For
Oh,
that
girl,
reason.
you're doing your job. Well, we've been like so trained out of being in tune with our bodies. It's like you think about what, and I feel like I'm just way more aware of this now that I do have little humans in my life, but like things that people say to kids where it's like they're having an emotional experience and they're like, you're right, it's okay, and it's like, bro, you need to validate those feelings, because by saying you're all right, you're telling them that even though they know there's something not right, that they're supposed to feel all right. So that is fucking confusing when you're in your most formative years and you're just like trying to learn how to deal with your body and your emotions. And so it's like little things like that in our upbringing that we're like now as adults trying to like break apart and try and figure out. We're like, okay, let me relearn this.
Even like as an adult, like going through anxiety, and like, I don't know, maybe this is like part of like my path and like why I was supposed to like go through all this, but I'd never had anxiety before. So like, I didn't know. And my husband's never had anxiety before. So like, I've never expected him to like fully, like grasp like what I was going through. But the amount of times that like I've been told by whoever to like, just stop thinking about it. You're fine. Like nothing's wrong. Like you're like, get out of your head. And it's so much easier said than done. It's so that like, you can't just turn it off, and you can't just stop thinking about it. And like those intrusive thoughts are there, whether you want them there or not. And so like, yeah, I just think for sure, like if we could learn as kids not to just, you're fine, like don't worry about it.
Bypassing.
That's totally how like everybody's still, trained now. And like I had to break that for myself, because like, no, like it's you actually have to work through it. You can't just stop thinking about it. It's not how it works.
Totally.
I wish.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole
like the switch and like it's gone.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could do a whole episode, I think, on like what what to tell and not tell children and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm glad that you're doing the work. And if you
Yeah, me
had some
too.
advice for other people going through it, like what would
Mhm.
what would you say? Like what would you say, what would you tell them
Yeah.
to do if they were feeling the way that you were feeling during that hard time?
Look to Eastern medicine. Like you have to put in the work. It's not there. Well, there is Xanax, but I was gonna say there's not just like a magic pill. There's not just something. And I think even when I went like holistically, I thought like, oh, I'm just deficient in magnesium. If I just take enough this, it's gonna fix this. And it had as like, like like I think like this would be hard for somebody to understand because it was for me, but like POTS, it's like, what are you talking about? Those are symptoms from this like disease, basically. So what do you like, how is that not physical is like what I always thought. Like, what do you mean it's emotional? And I think if I could explain that, like, your emotional body, like your mind, can create physical symptoms. And just because it has a label, like just because it's called POTS, doesn't mean that like you're bound to like this problem forever, which is what Western medicine would tell you. And that goes for so many things like eczema, like even just something like high blood pressure, like just because you have that doesn't mean it's because your heart's injured and you have that, or eczema. I guess I don't know what Western medicine's says about eczema, but like Eastern medicine even like would say like you need to heal your gut or your liver, your detox pathways. But sometimes your mind is actually what's causing those symptoms.
Yeah.
And I think like people really don't realize how strong your mind is, and
And your emotions.
yeah, your emotions and like fear, and like you can really like
Yeah.
I listened, it was like on the radio one time when we're driving, and it was how stress, like let's say in your job, this guy starts this job and he is extremely stressed. It's like a really fast-paced work. He has crazy deadlines, and all of a sudden he's never had allergies before and he's allergic to everything under the sun. He has depression now. He gets hives, and this talk was about like, like how can somebody go from having no allergies to being allergic to everything? And it's that like that stressful situation can cause lots of stuff. And so something that happened to you as a kid, or something that happened to your parents or your grandparents, and you're holding on to like those emotions for someone else, that's really stressful to your subconscious, like to your brain, and it 100% can cause symptoms. It's kind of like how like I had POTS, and that POTS caused anxiety. It didn't just come out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Hey, Megan.
It was like a domino effect.
I want to ask you to share a quick the story about because you and I were talking and you said you hadn't actually experienced like POT symptoms for quite a time, but then because I think this is interesting at how it kind of ties in of like when you have the unresolved emotions that are anchored in there from the past, whether they're your own or someone else's, there tends to be a trigger that comes along and triggers like those symptoms, but sometimes you don't know what the trigger is. And it'd be interesting to share that experience recently when your symptoms did get triggered.
Yeah. So I had like unofficially like healed my POTS. I hadn't had symptoms for like months, and I got a head cold, and all of a sudden my POTS symptoms were there like times 1,000. I could barely sit upright. I thought like I was going to faint and pass out. And it's not the first time that's happened. In the fall or something like that, when we all got a bug around the house. Same thing. I was like pot symptoms on steroids, and it's actually a thing that like when you get sick, your pot symptoms get worse. And it was just kind of interesting because I was like, well, like I worked through this, and it was like that, like, being sick is stress on your body, and that stress was like triggering these symptoms to like, we had a session on it, but like to protect me. And so because if you feel really lightheaded and like you're going to pass out, what are you going to do? You're going to go lay down on the couch. You're going to take a break and rest. And that's not what I had been doing. I was sick and I was, doing laundry and keeping up with the house and doing stuff with the kids and not listening to my body. And sure enough,
Your body
there's those
made
thought
you.
symptoms being like, hello, listen
Time to
here.
slow down. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the message that we got from it was like, you needed to like take a break.
Mhm.
And it was interesting how it kind of came up like both of those times. And then we did the session, and the next day I called you and asked you how you were feeling. And what
And
did you
the
say?
symptoms were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just proves that you can believe the diagnosis, but you don't need to believe the prognosis.
Love that. That's so great. Let's put that on a mug.
Yeah, like POTS is a thing, no doubt, but do I think like you have to live with it forever and struggle and just manage it?
No.
Definitely.
Well, you're definitely right. Like there's
Mm.
always some sort of emotional cause, especially for something chronic like that, because the body is so miraculous and can heal things. Like obviously you're going to have physical injuries, you're going to have this and that. But it just like, even if for people who are more sciencey, like they've studied just like athletes, how they like think in their minds, how they're going to win the race, and they perform better. That just proves that your mind does have that power to create this reality for you, but it goes the opposite way. So it's like, if in your mind you are thinking something the opposite, like, oh, I'm a piece of shit, or I need to like do something, whatever, it's going to cause a stress response in your body. It's like your mind doesn't know the difference between you thinking that, like you said, like if you have fear or stress or whatever, your mind doesn't know the difference between that being real or just perceived.
We talked about this like recently, and it's like they call it the nocebo effect, right? Like we all know what the placebo effect is, right? And it's basically the opposite of that. Like the placebo effect is you take, the sugar pill thinking like this is going to cure your ailment because you don't know that it's a sugar pill, and it cures you. And like, without a doubt, if you think that pill is going to kill you or it like hurt you,
or the diagnosis and prognosis,
right,
they tell them telling you you're sick.
Yeah.
That's a nocebo effect, where now your brain just like keeps on manifesting that into reality because you were told that you're like sick.
Yeah, the number of people that I've heard of that have like, let's use cancer because it's pretty common, have been like diagnosed with cancer, and their prognosis, oh, you only have like 2 years to live or whatever. But then there's these people that are like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna go live my life, and they end up like living their life and enjoying themselves, and they end up like curing their cancer and like going on to live a full life.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
I think that was part of like your success, Megan, was like your mindset in it all. I think you really were in like I didn't have to like, and I feel like I didn't have to convince you a whole lot of that. Like you kind of, for whatever reason, already like knew that, and you already knew you wanted to like, get to the root of it. And I feel like that was a really big hand in your success because you were so determined, and your belief really like helped you overcome that.
Yeah, I think like people need to know like your body can heal, and like if you put in the work, like it will. Like that's what it's like designed to do. Like if you
Yeah.
think about it, like I watched like a documentary, like your body creates cancer cells every single day and fights them off. Like
Mhm.
every day it's fighting for you and for your health. So like, and if you believe that like you can heal from something, you will. It might take time, but like you will.
I
100%. I
appreciate that you
believe it with
guys,
all my heart.
yeah, I appreciate that you guys like brought that up because that's like one of the things that I typically like to do with clients that work with me long term too is like, okay, let's break this idea that like you're going to rely on your practitioner. And I feel like this is even more common from people coming from the like Western medical system because it's like they do, it's when they feel sick just a little bit they go to their doctor, right? It's like you're relying when you could just be putting in the work and then you're just healed and then you don't have to rely on
Yeah.
anyone but yourself anymore.
And like
Yeah.
once you put in the work, like everything after that is so much easier. Like I know so much stuff, even like Eastern medicine, like about different supplements and different herbs. And like I have like a pharmacy of like natural supplements, but like if you heal like in here and like your heart
And here
basically like in
yeah.
here, then
Yeah.
like you keep yourself healthy, like you top yourself up with like supplements kind of thing, to
Mhm.
stay strong and healthy and have a good gut health and whatever. But
You're not
like
relying on it.
your emotional state should be number one. Like like even if you are interested in natural health and you're going for acupuncture and you're, taking magnesium before bed to help with your insomnia, you're still at like step number 2. Like you need to like
Yep.
heal like this before you.
Mhm.
In
That's just my.
my TCM book that I have on like TCM and trauma, it literally says like step 1 is healing the emotions and the meridians, and then step 2 is like going to the physical body
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I
it
mean
can eliminate a lot of symptoms.
there's definitely a place like you said for like medicine and whatnot, but yeah,
Mhm.
the root of it is going to be in your emotional spiritual body first and then your
Yeah.
physical body will
Because
follow.
what if you do, like, even when I see clients, like physically or emotionally, like when I see like people in the health food store, I say to them, I'm like, sure, you could get on all these products. I could sell you $500 worth of products, but all of these things are treating the symptoms, right? Like, let's just get to the root and take like 3 products. Let's get to the root of the issue. And then it's amazing how many of those symptoms just like fall away. And it's like the same with the emotional stuff. It's like if we get to the emotional root, which in my opinion, a lot of it, 90% of it is more emotional. If we get to that, how many of your symptoms can just like fall away? And then you're not
Mhm.
spending as much money, you're not managing it as much, you have a lot more freedom either way,
You're living
physically
life,
or
baby.
emotionally. Yeah. Back to basics.
And you just get to like know yourself better too. I feel like you get to know your body better. You get to know your emotional body better.
And
Yeah.
like when I tell like a lot of people that I like that I'll talk to like about sit and like, like some friends, and I say like, what's like let's say you're watching this and like you're like, that's it's still like woo woo or whatever. Like basically how I started, like what's the worst that's gonna happen? Like I get to like talk about my feelings. So like I have like a therapy session and then like,
Yeah.
nothing happens. But like that's like the worst case scenario is you get to like have a therapy session and then like and you don't feel better. But like the best case scenario is like you could change your whole life. And like that sounds like so dramatic, but like that's what happened for me. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, like, I think I'll still need some time to like get back to 100%. And like I mentioned before, I don't think I'm going to be the old me, which like that kind of bugged me for a while. Like, I just want to be my old self, but like, I'm a different person now going through like what I had gone through and like believing in what I believe now. And I just think like you got to start somewhere and like,
Yeah. Now
worst
you're the
case
new
scenario-
you. You're the
I think
new,
that's
like,
totally okay.
you're the
to-
new best version of you. But sometimes
And
going
just a little
back
bit
to
more
that version of you is
introverted.
not the best.
I think it's okay too to like mourn your older self. It's like you
Yeah.
were who you were for how long, right? It's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be a real party person before I got in touch with my
too.
spiritual side, and and like
Yeah, I'm like introverted
sometimes,
and
yeah, and sometimes now I'm like, I want to get a little fun, but it's just like, what's wrong with that? You know what I mean? So I guess just like
Yeah.
not judging yourself and just letting yourself be
Yeah.
what you want to be in the moment.
yeah. I hope that like this can like convince somebody to like sit and try subconscious imprinting, because like it's amazing.
Yeah. Now you
Thank
don't
you.
have to be on prescriptions forever, and you can just like, I feel like now you can manage everything else that comes your way with like a totally different awareness. And like, even I was surprised how quickly you messaged me, like when you were sick. You were like, I need like a session, like, can you do it like right now?
Yeah.
Like, that was like your first thing. You're like, let's just do it. And then like the next day, like you were feeling like better. So like now going forward with anything that like comes up, you didn't just like heal this one thing. Now you have this new awareness on all the things, so that you'd be so much calmer if something else comes up. You'd be like, oh, wait a minute, let's do some emotional work on that, and like just not get that like health anxiety like all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that yeah, like you said, I hope that this does like open the eyes for anyone who's listening who maybe
Yeah.
experienced some of those things that you mentioned. And you can use the link in our description of this episode to join our list, which is where you can connect with us and get this kind of
Yeah.
healing. But also make sure you guys subscribe, because we're on all the different places.
Yes, and turn on notifications, when we post our next episodes. And Megan, I just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast. I feel like when I first asked you, you were like maybe a little bit unsure, but I really think this is going to help a lot of people. And it was just like such an honor to like hear your story like all the way through, and sharing just like what you've been through, how you've overcome it. And this is really beautiful to hear that. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for changing my life.
You're
Yeah, thank you
welcome.
for being so vulnerable and sharing that with us. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah.